Hello guys, today we are discussing a topic that is both controversial and deeply personal for many people. They claim that religion is the problem of Africa. I have heard many people who hold this claim, but I ask, is this a true claim or is there something more complex at play? In this video, we are going to discuss that. Many people argue that religion is the root cause of Africans' problem. Usually, when they say this, they have Christianity in mind. The first thing they point at is the role of Western missionaries in the colonization agenda of the African people. But that will be a discussion for another day. They also point to the abuses and the excesses they see in the religious landscape across the continent. It is true that while churches are growing rapidly in Africa, many of our societies remain in poverty and underdeveloped. We see a troubling disparity. Pastors and religious leaders live in luxury, while the majority of their congregants struggle to make ends meet. Some pastors own multiple luxury cars, private jets, and mansions. They justify their wealth by preaching the prosperity gospel, which teaches that material wealth is a sign of God's favor. This creates a stark contrast between the opulence of the church leaders and the financial struggles of their followers. In extreme cases, pastors have encouraged practices that defy common sense and endangers people's life. For instance, some pastors have told congregants to drink poisonous substances like bleach as a test of their faith, promising that those who truly believe will not be harmed. Sexual abuse by religious leaders is another grave issue. Some pastors exploit their position of authority to coerce congregants, particularly women, into sexual relationships, often under the guise of spiritual healing or divine instructions. Victims are frequently afraid to speak out due to the power dynamics at play. And in many cases, the abuses goes unpunished. This dynamic has understandably led to frustration among many Africans. There is a sense that religion has been hijacked by those with political or personal agendas. Politicians, for example, often manipulate religious sentiment to advance their own interests, using faith as a tool to maintain power rather than as a genuine source of moral leadership, like the Ghana National Cathedral scandal. Meanwhile, many people spend hours, sometimes days, attending church service, prayer camps, desperately praying for breakthroughs in their life. These people are seeking miracles of financial success, health, or general prosperity, but they often do so without focusing on practical, productive ventures that could actually transform their economic circumstances. So, those who argue that religion is the problem of Africa do so for a reason. They have good basis for such claims. But I believe otherwise. Religion is not our problem, but the way we practice or express it is the problem. The way religion is practiced can sometimes lead to stagnation rather than progress. Instead of empowering people to become agents of change in their own lives, it can reinforce overly dependence on God and so-called men of God. This mindset can prevent individuals from seeking real, tangible ways to improve their economic and social situation, trapping them in a cycle of poverty while those at the top thrive. The key here is not to reject religion or Christianity, but to reform how we approach it. Religion at its best should challenge the status quo, promote justice, and empower individuals to take charge of their own destiny. Faith communities should encourage critical thinking, accountability, and practical solutions to the real issues people face every day. Instead of preaching prosperity without work, churches should focus on equipping people with the tools and skills they need to thrive in their economic and social lives. When we misuse faith as a tool for manipulation, exploitation, or passive acceptance of suffering, it becomes destructive. But when we use it to foster human dignity, justice, and collective responsibility, it can become a powerful force for good in Africa and beyond. Those who hold this opinion argue further that development countries like China, Europe, and the United States have developed because they are not religious. They suggest that by distancing themselves from faith, these nations have been able to focus on science, innovation, and economic progress. But I believe that this is a misunderstanding of both the role of religion in these societies and the actual factors that contribute to their development. Let's take a closer look at some of these countries. First, it is important to note that many developed nations are not as secular as people often claim. Take the US for example. The US is one of the most religious developed countries in the world, with a significant portion of the population regularly attending church, participating in religious activity, and openly expressing their faith. Despite this, the country remains a global leader in innovation, technology, advancement, and economic power. Religious institutions in the US often play a major role in social service, in education, in charitable activity that contribute to the social welfare of its people. Moreover, many of the founding principles of Western nations are deeply rooted in religious ideas. For example, concepts like human rights, justice, and equality that have shaped Western democracies find their origins in religious thought, particularly from Judeo-Christian values. This shows that religion and development are not mutually exclusive. In fact, religion can be a driving force behind social reforms and progress, as seen in historical movements like the abolition of slavery or the civil rights movement in the United States, both of which were largely led by religious figures like Martin Luther King Jr. Let's take China's development. China is often held up as an example of a nation that has developed rapidly without much religious influence. It is true that China's government is officially secular and religious practices has often been restricted under communist rule. However, what truly drives China's development isn't a lack of religion, but strategic economic policies, investment in infrastructure, education, and innovation. China has excelled by focusing on industrial growth, technological advancement, and fostering an environment where entrepreneurship and large-scale manufacturing could thrive. Religion or lack of it thereof has very little to do with its economic rise. In fact, China is the home to many religious traditions, including Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, and many more. What makes a difference in China's case is the emphasis on pragmatic long-term economic planning, not the absence of faith. In the same way, many parts of Europe, particularly Western Europe, are often seen as secular regions. It is true that church attendance has declined in recent years, but Europe's development stretched back centuries, and religious institutions have historically played a crucial role in shaping its political, educational, and social systems. For example, universities like Oxford, Cambridge, and the Sorbonne in Paris were originally established as religious institutions. Many of Europe's law and social policies still reflect moral and principles rooted in Christian teachings. So what is the practical lessons for Africans? What we can learn from these examples is that development is not about whether a society is religious or not. Rather, it is how we balance faith and practical actions. Countries that succeed do so because they invest in their people, in education, in infrastructure, in governance, and technological innovation. They don't merely pray for success, they work for it. Africa's challenge, therefore, isn't religion itself, but how we practice our faith, but how we incorporate our faith into our lives in a productive way. Instead of seeing religion as something separate from development, we can harness the value of faith, like community, justice, and responsibility, to build a stronger and a more equitable society. We can look to religious institutions to not only preach, but also teach skills, promote education, and engage meaningful economic activity that uplifts the entire community. For example, many churches in Africa could follow the lead of religious organizations in developed countries by creating vocational training programs, offering financial literacy workshops, or partnering with businesses to create job opportunities for their congregants. Some churches are already doing this, but on a more smaller scale. If we can expand this effort, religion can become a tool for transformation, not just spiritual guidance. If the church can actively make use of its prophetic voice and commit itself into seeking justice, into seeking accountability, and into calling its leaders into effective leadership, religion can become a useful tool for Africa. So, overall, my argument is simple. It is not the absence of religion that leads to development, but the presence of effective policies, education, infrastructure, and commitment to social and economic progress. Religion, when practiced wisely, can be a partner in development, not an obstacle. Let me know your thoughts and comments in the comment section. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you next week for more. Always remember that theology is fine. Trust me.